The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Nadiah Koh. Nomination day is tomorrow, marking a crucial phase in this year's general election. Both the PAP and the Workers' Party are introducing new candidates, shifting the political landscape in significant ways. The PAP is showcasing a new generation of leaders with its 5G slate of younger, more diverse candidates, while the Workers' Party continues to expand its pool, bringing in professionals from a wide range of backgrounds. As both parties gear up for intense battles in key constituencies like East Coast and Punggol, economic issues also take centre stage, with figures like Sumarleki Amjah of the Progressive Singapore Party placing job security and the rising cost of living at the forefront. So what does this shift in candidate lineups and the focus on key issues mean for the race ahead just before nomination day? Well, to find out more, joining us today is Dr Gillian Koh, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. Hi Gillian, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nadia. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you. The PAP is bringing in a new slate of candidates, many of them younger and from diverse backgrounds, and they're positioning this as their 5G or fifth generation leadership. What's the driving force behind this focus on generational renewal, and why is the party prioritizing younger leaders right now?
Well, the PAP, which has been governing Singapore for 65 years, is clearly one that is decidedly focused on its longevity, which I know sounds very ironical or counterintuitive, but with a huge emphasis on constant renewal of its leadership ranks. So now what we have in GE 2025 is Mr. Lawrence Wong, our new fourth Prime Minister and PAP's new Secretary General, leading the charge for the PAP. And obviously, being at the helm now allows him to shape the lineup for the future. We expect him to continue as PM for the next decade and a half. And as he looks back, he probably will remember that he was brought in only in 2011, and it has taken him a decade and a half, he and his peers, to be in the leadership position, running government and the party. So in that sense, if the PAP continues to be focused on its long-term impact, then it must bring in younger, leaders and to build them up in this space, which is becoming more complex. The space is becoming more complex, and they also need to be able to identify with the people on the ground. They would grow mature and grow old with them as well, if you see what I mean. So, yes, the PAP has an emphasis on renewal. It is also Lawrence Wong's first outing in the GE. He gets a clear hand in order to determine who he wants. He must pick people that will work with him now, but also give him the opportunity to nurture them for maybe the next generation of leaders.
Right. On that note of younger leaders, at this stage, how quickly are political leaders being groomed for top positions?
Well, you did mention that the PAP slate is a diverse one, so we have to acknowledge the fact that there are more senior candidates as well, and they would have held senior positions in, the Singapore Armed Forces, senior position in the civil service. So they are people who, if elected, would be almost ready to step right into the inner circle of government and even become cabinet ministers, if you wish. But there are, of course, as we've just mentioned, the younger leaders who would be in their early 40s or not yet even 40, and they will probably have 5 to 10 years to build up their standing on the ground, or if after this new parliamentary term, if they are elected, prove themselves very well, then they too can be very quickly elevated into positions of junior ministers or ministers even.
Right. We've spoken about younger leaders, but one interesting thing here is the emphasis on minority candidates. The PAP has actively recruited more from minority groups with the intention to ensure that Singapore's leadership reflects its multicultural society. Why is this push for greater diversity so central to the PAP's vision?
It's always been quite important for the PAP to have minority candidates because it views itself as a national movement, and clearly I've said that, it has been in power for more than 6 decades. The most important thing is this, that voters and various segments of the voting population must find that there are leaders they can identify with and that these leaders can identify with them. And so among the new candidates, we see 4 new Malay candidates and we see 3 new Indian candidates. As for the Indian candidates, I think there is less of a burden or expectation of the Indian community that they will only speak to or address Indian communities' concerns because it is that diverse. But even then, among the new candidates, we see there's a gentleman called Dinesh Vasudesh, and also, there is Dr. Hamid Razak, and they, have said that they do want to champion issues that are relevant to the Indian community. So I think it's important to see that the PAP perceives itself as a national movement, wants to make sure that various segments of the community feel comfortable, feel assured that there are people who are from their community and can reflect their interests.
I see. I also want to take a look at the Workers' Party because they're also introducing new faces for the upcoming election, but they've emphasized the broad range of backgrounds in their candidates, spanning law, psychology, and even the military. What's your take on the Workers' Party's strategy of diversifying its candidate pool across such varied professional fields?
I think likewise with the WP, which is the opposition party that most of us consider as leader of the pack within that opposition landscape, then it too is also aiming to ensure that its candidates diverse and provide that capacity to understand concerns right across the island. I think that is, its own play to ensure that people will view it as a national movement rather than one that hews to a particular line or hews to a particular community. Let's say, a certain Chinese dialect group community or a certain ethnic community, for instance. So in the same way, if it does have the ambitions to become eventually something that is viewed as, a party that can represent people right across the island, then this is quite an important thing for the WP to do.
Right. There's also been talk about how the PAP and Workers' Party are trying to create a balance in their candidate selection in terms of qualifications versus experience. The PAP slate looks very much like the previous generation, but the WP seems to be catching up in terms of its own elite candidates. Is this a case of both parties looking to position themselves as the party of qualified candidates, or is there something more strategic happening here?
Well, I think as I mentioned just now, the PAP has been in power for 6 decades and more, so it must be able to present a slate of younger candidates or fresh candidates who suggest that they have the capacity, the facility to run government. And in the same way, while WP has said that it does not yet have any ambitions to form government, it does say that its medium-term goal is to deny the PAP its 2/3 supermajority in Parliament. Questions were asked after the 2020 GE when there were 10 members of WP who were elected as MPs, whether the WP would be prepared to at least have a shadow of a shadow government, so to speak, that among 10, they'd be able to ensure that each of them is able to take on and track a key portfolio in government. So if it were to at least want to grow, if it were to just want to deny the PAP a supermajority, you're looking at it having to have about more than 33 candidates. And with that scale, it's not there yet, but maybe in the next GE, they do need that diversity to be able to send a signal to Singaporeans that they look like they have the diversity of backgrounds the facility and capacity to cover the key portfolios in government in order to offer alternative views to what the PAP can offer as a government.
I see. Looking at the broader political landscape, we're also seeing a focus on economic concerns. The new PSP candidate Sumarleki Amjah has emphasized securing good jobs and job security for Singaporeans. How do you think this focus on economic stability and job security will influence the upcoming election?
There is no general election where one of the key themes in Singapore is not about the economy and also cost of living and housing, by the way. So, I think all parties will be expected to be able to address Singapore's economic performance of the past, Singapore's economic performance in the immediate past and current outlook, and perhaps in the medium term. So it is quite critical that, the parties themselves prepare messages about how they interpret what has happened in the global economy. And we know that we're living under the threat of President Trump's Liberation Day tariff policies. And this will have a knock-on effect on business resilience, on job and employment resilience, on household finances and planning for the future. So this is definitely something that, all the parties must have their key and important candidates ready to address and to, provide statements of, how they view this outlook and what it means for public policy and what they hope to be able to present and argue for in Parliament if they are elected.
I see. Gillian, we're expecting to see some competition in constituencies like East Coast and Punggol, where both the PAP and WP are expected to clash in some of the most hotly contested races. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the contestation in East Coast GRC is only to be expected. While it's been reconfigured so that it is different boundaries from GE 2020, I think that, we all expect WP will field, among its best candidates in order to, make a bid to wrest East Coast GRC from the PAP, which will be helmed at least by Minister Edwin Tong, and the PAP is yet to also itself reveal its cards to announce or show us or tell us who would be contesting there for the PAP. So that's for sure. And it's always been the case that East Coast GRC has been a marginal seat over the last few general elections. What is of interest, of course, is actually Punggol GRC, which the WP has made known. It's been working the ground there for a few years, and it's interested in, expanding its reach in adjacent areas to Aljunied, Sengkang, and therefore Punggol would certainly be one to watch. And the reason why I would say this also is because the PAP has yet to uncover or reveal, who would be the anchor minister for Punggol GRC, and certainly, its slate of candidates there. So that would be of interest. Thirdly, there is Tampines GRC, again, hints that the WP would be interested in contesting there, but the PAP slate is very clear there. It'll be helmed by Minister Sagos Zulkifli, and he's also introduced some fresh faces in Tampines GRC. So these are the three to watch in the areas that I think WP are interested in. Of course, there's the rest of the island or the west of the island, and the PSP has already said that it will contest the closest fight of GE 2020, and that was in West Coast GRC. Now it's been reconfigured, and we're looking at West Coast Jurong West GRC, which will be held by Minister Desmond Lee.
Right. So, Gillian, before we let you go, what else will you be keeping an eye out for nomination day tomorrow?
Well, I think what would be of interest is certainly whether there will be major switches in terms of where the PAP feels ministers to anchor the GRCs. As I mentioned previously, we do not know yet, if there will be another co-anchor in East Coast GRC. We do not know yet who will anchor Tampines GRC. And I say this because it's just been revealed yesterday that Ms. Indrani Raja, who had been in Tanjong Pagar GRC as a co-anchor with Minister Chan Chun Sing, has now been switched out to Pasir Ris Changi GRC. So the PAP is able and quite bold to make such switches, as it did also in GE 2020 when they switched out Mr. Heng Swee Keat from Tampines GRC to anchor East Coast GRC. So number one, what are some surprise switches? Number two, we'll be looking at where WP's so-called star catchers will be fielded. And in this case, it has a host of people who may be considered star catchers. And this will certainly include Mr. Harpreet Nihal Singh, Mr. Michael Teng, and a few more. So where will they be fielded, and who will the PAP have to, fend off this contest? And we're certainly looking at, again, East Coast GRC, will the WP field most of its star catchers there. The third one is whether, in fact, the leaders in Aljunied GRC, which is Workers' Party's key heartland, if they will be redistributed out of Aljunied. And here, of course, we can think of the WP SecGen, Mr. Pritam Singh, its chairperson, Ms. Sylvia Lim, its head of policy, Mr. Gerald Giam. They are clearly leaders who may be fielded in some of the WP, some of the constituencies WP has expressed interest in, contesting.
I see. All right, Gillian. Thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you. Thank you for a good chat, Nadiah.
Thank you. That was Dr. Gillian Koh, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. This has been The Big Story with me, Nadiah Koh.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.